You're listening to the Mike on the Right podcast.
Hey, welcome to the fastest half hour in podcast media. This is the Mike on the Right show, and I am your host, Mike Neal, broadcasting from the heart of the heartland in central Indiana, the great Hoosier State. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. Please like, share, subscribe, follow, 5-star ratings where you're listening to this. Share our clips on social media. Anything you can do to help us continue to get this out, to grow this show. You are the reason that I'm here. You are the reason that this works. Thank you so much. We have a jam-packed episode, and we've had a jam-packed week. And before I get into the topics that I want to discuss today, you've seen several rulings come out of the Supreme Court that is a win for the Constitution and a win for America. Earlier this week, you saw that the Supreme Court ruled on the Planned Parenthood case related to Medicaid funding in South Carolina and whether or not a law written in South Carolina could be used to defund Planned Parenthood Medicaid dollars. And of course, the ACLU and folks sued about that. Planned Parenthood sued about that. And thankfully, the Supreme Court ruled that, yes, a state can absolutely defund people like Planned Parenthood, especially with some of the business that they espouse, the abortion being one of the top ones. Of course, Planned Parenthood does a lot of other things, but because they continue to provide abortions, no dollars should go to them from the government, period. And the Supreme Court has ruled that they can do that. And then today, this is Friday, June 27th. I'm skipping ahead. I'm ready for vacation here in a couple of weeks. I'm very excited about that. There was a ruling today, another 6-3 decision along ideological lines, that in part ruled that all of these injunctions that these lower courts have been placing on the Trump administration and on his executive power, which of course you have the right to sue in court, you have the right to do that. The Supreme Court has ruled, hey, unfortunately, lower courts, you've been erring. You cannot continue to just injunct nationwide anything you want. And we also know that the left venue chooses, they harvest and they focus on liberal venues that they can get their case before because they know that an injunction will be filed. And I know that the right does that too, but it is so much more heinous on the left because it's every little thing. Now, I'm not saying that the president should have unchecked power. There's a check and balance system in this country that we need to continue to protect. But it is the courts who have been going over their constitutional authority and injuncting every little thing they can. And we have judge-made law, which should never be a thing. Just like when Obamacare was legalized as a tax. There was no discussion of a tax in the ACA. None. Yet the Supreme Court said, it's a tax. Oh, yeah, it is a tax. This is the same thing. And now finally the judges have made a great ruling on just the overarching matters of that. And so I just wanted to throw that out there at the beginning of the show. I got a lot to get to. We got to get going. I wanted to get to specifically, I had discussed last week that I was going to have a whole show on the relationship between the U.S. and Israel and the history of Israel and the history as to why we're here today. But so much has happened across the nation, especially with Iran and Israel and the United States, that I feel like I got to push that off a little bit. And so I'm going to push that off, and we're going to discuss that at a later time. Sometime in July is my goal. I'll get back to you on when we're going to do that and how we can put that together and when we can put that together. But in this episode, we're going to discuss what happened in Iran since the last time we were together on Friday. What's true? What is fake news? We're going to talk about the primary elections in New York City and the continuing shift in the political positions in America and why what's happening in New York City affects us all across the nation. And then we're going to talk about how Indiana Governor Mike Braun has made this great plan to freeze state college tuition and how that can be a model for the nation when costs skyrocket everywhere. Just like healthcare and everything else, education is spiraling out of control in cost, and it's harmful to so many people who want to get a college degree, and it has been a part of the exacerbation of the student loan debacle. And Governor Braun has a great plan for Indiana that can be used as a model for the nation. We're going to talk about that. Let's go with the first item, though, the U.S.-Israel-Iran conflict. And now we can throw the United States in there because we have intervened. It has been a week of war, diplomacy, and internal crisis in Iran. This past week has been one of the most dangerous and defining weeks in modern Iranian history, probably since the Shah being overthrown and the revolution in 1979. Precision airstrikes, nuclear fallout, global warnings, and not warnings, though you can infer as you please, and a people caught in crossfire. And it's not just Israel anymore. The United States is now directly involved in bombing Iranian nuclear facilities. So what's been going on since last Friday? Let's break it down. Last weekend, the Israeli military launched a coordinated set of precision airstrikes on key Iranian military and nuclear targets. They weren't just symbolic either. These bombings, these targets were on uranium facilities in different parts, and I'm not even going to try to pronunciate some of these cities. I'm not going to get caught in that because I probably will do it wrong. And reports suggest that Israel used both manned aircraft and drones, and I'm sure with Mossad support, and we've since then we've known that Mossad has been a part of this since the beginning, years and years and years ago, putting something like this together. And they've crippled radar and missile systems as well, all across Iran, which is why Israel and the United States have been able to control their airspace for as long as they have. Of course, Iran fired back immediately. Missiles have been firing into Israel, hitting Tel Aviv. Almost everything's been knocked down. All those missiles have been knocked down for the most part. A couple of them landed. Most of that is not hitting. And the Middle East lit up in a matter of hours. By Monday, things escalated fast. The United States enters the picture with strategic bombings of 3 Iranian nuclear facilities, including Fordow, which is the premier central location, and absolutely obliterated their operation, especially these facilities buried deep, deep, deep in the ground. We have great bunker busters and those Freedom Dorito planes. That's what I call them. I can't tell you, B-2s. And those big, black-winged, just amazing stealth bombers. The International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed multiple hits. So this isn't just U.S. intelligence. This also is the international community that is working on nonproliferation, who is working on the safety of these weapons. And of course, part of the deals that have been made with the UN to try to monitor and slow down the enrichment of uranium in Iran, or Iran. I've been told I say it wrong. I think it's Iran. And of course, these people have been shut out and all these things, and we know that Iran has been working to make the bomb. Iran's government responded by downplaying the damage, and of course there was this strategic leak. Some fake leak that came, some people are saying it's coming out of the Democrats on the intelligence side, in the intelligence committees in either the House or the Senate. I don't know if that's proven. But the IEA experts say otherwise, by the way. That was just an opportunity to try to down the president in what he did. That the Democrats of these committees would rather be okay with Iran getting the bomb than they are to give. They're better. They would prefer to do that than give President Trump any credit for what he's done. But this is no longer a proxy battle, folks. This is a direct confrontation. So inside Iran, it's chaos. There's been a near total blackout, and I've not looked at the news today to see if that's gotten any better. But like their internet was blacked out, almost like their usage, based on usage organizations that kind of track those things, 97% drop. The government, and it's not that we bombed their version of AT&T. Their universe was not out because Donald Trump, canceled their version of Days of Our Lives on TV and on internet. It's because the government shut it off because there's a lot of people in the country that I don't think knew that they had been bombed. And they were trying to control the information. They didn't want anyone to know. And they also didn't want anyone to know that the government went into hiding. Ayatollah Khomeini went into hiding because he didn't want to get killed. So some of that was due to bombing damage, but most of it is deliberate censorship. Tens of thousands in Tehran have fled the capital. And there's a bunch of video footage showing packed roads, empty shelves. Everyone went into a panic mode. And I can understand There's a lot of innocent civilians. There's a lot of oppressed people. But it was absolute chaos. Iran's leadership is losing control of the domestic narrative more and more and more every day. So, of course, they have to shut off access to information. It's the only way they can control their people. On Tuesday, Iran's parliament voted to suspend cooperation with the IAEA. They didn't want these. They were already locking those inspectors out in places anyway, but now they're not doing it at all. That move could signal Iran's withdrawal from other nuclear nonproliferation treaties. Of course, that's a concern. Their foreign minister has called all of that a sham anyway. It doesn't protect Iran's sovereignty. But of course, a sovereign nation cannot be allowed to grab nuclear weapons if it is a state sponsor of terrorism and has told everyone they're going to wipe the infidels, specifically Israel, off the face of the earth. So your sovereignty doesn't matter when you're an evil regime. But that's a huge shift. Iran is betting on nationalism and defiance and not diplomacy. And the United States has acted in a peace through strength scenario, not just for itself, not just for Israel, but the world. So now diplomacy has hit a wall, and that largely is because these facilities have been destroyed. The European Union diplomats have met in Geneva to try to de-escalate the crisis. That's all failed. Iran says it will not negotiate until Israeli aggression ends. And I think we're seeing this. There was some talk of the ceasefire not completely working. I think we're now in a ceasefire position now. And the United States has given a 2-week deadline for talks to resume. Tehran publicly rejected it. Now they've gotten what they've got. Russia, of course, is trying to get involved because they are supporters of Iran. There's another axis of evil country trying to get involved, which is horrible. This isn't about geopolitics. This is also about people. Not just the people in Iran, not just the people in Israel, not just the people of the United States, but of the world. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, there is going to be hell to pay across the world. This cannot be allowed to happen. But we also need to understand, just like in Gaza, that there are innocent people that are hurting. And we need to do all we can to help them. A lot of the infrastructure has been destroyed around these areas because these areas are close to cities. Hospitals, of course, overwhelmed. Electricity is unreliable. Fuel's being rationed. But Iran is trying to control the narrative, but the evidence is everywhere that this regime is not putting a good faith effort forward on uranium enrichment or its people. So what's next? Iran's nuclear program took a big hit. I don't care what the Democrats say or what the Trump haters say. It took a huge hit. But that doesn't mean that Iran is going to stop. They're at a crossroads. Israel's watching. The U.S. is watching. Russia's posturing. We are at a major turning point where a lot can change if we continue to stay the course. This doesn't mean ground troops, but we need to be ready to say, hey, all right, these were your warning shots. They're pretty big warning shots. We'll do it again. Let's get to something that if you're looking for electrical system diversification, fair enough, but you're not going to enrich uranium to create weapons. Of course, Iran is saying it's not going to back down. They're becoming more isolated, more radicalized. But the U.S. and Israel are not playing games anymore. The U.S. wants negotiations, and we've only got a short amount of time. If these Iranians and these Iranian scientists go back to this, it's going to be a problem. These next 2 weeks are going to be very, very important. In closing on this segment, if you're not paying attention to this, you need to be. This isn't Iraq in 2003. This is proven. It's active. It's nuclear. Iran with the bomb is not just an Israeli problem. It is a global nightmare. And as always, I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to keep breaking this down. I'm going to keep telling you the truth. And we'll leave it there for now. And hopefully next week, I'm not going to have to talk about this again, other than I hope to say that maybe there will be some sort of deal in place that ends this mess and puts us on a path to peace. Let's move on to New York City's mayoral primary. New York City just held its Democratic mayoral primary. And folks, if you're not paying attention to what just happened, you need to be. Because what played out this week in the Big Apple is not just about one city. It is a red flag. It is a warning light for the rest of the country. The most powerful, most iconic American city is flirting again with full-blown socialistic governance. And the consequences to New York and beyond could be catastrophic. So let's talk about what just happened. The Democratic primary just wrapped up, and once again, the moderate voices were drowned out by a loud, far-left, progressive group of activists with an aggressive vision of what they want this city to be, and they won't stop there. We don't need this to continue to fester in our country. The front runner is a Democratic socialist with backing from the Democratic Socialists of America, the same people who support Bernie Sanders, which have anti-cop rhetoric. They don't back the blue, open disdain for capitalism. And this isn't just AOC-style symbolism anymore. It's operational control over the largest municipal government in America and one of the largest cities in the world. But you know what? Voter turnout was abysmal, and I meant to look up the percentage. But this was a low-energy primary, which means an activist base can control the message. It can control the election. The average New Yorker sat out, and radicals took the wheel. Part of that was due to the incumbent mayor, Adams, being engulfed in numerous scandals. And he's not leaving this race, by the way. We'll talk about it in a second. But it drove down the desire to vote. Plain and simple. There's a lot of other things going on, but that's a big one. He did not win the Democratic primary. But if this primary winner goes on to win the general election, let's be honest. In New York City, the Democratic primary is the election most of the time. Expect a hard left City Hall agenda. Defunding and restructuring the police. Again, we know that's not worked. Defunding the police is a catchphrase. It doesn't work. All the cities, for the most part, that have done that have come back because crime skyrocketed. The expansion of sanctuary city protections in a time when we are trying to right-size the immigration system and specifically get a handle on illegal immigration in America. There'll probably be rent control. There'll probably be housing control. Citywide guarantees of income, pilot programs, guaranteed income from the government. They've talked about this in their campaign. New taxes on real estate, private enterprise to fund these socialist programs. And all of this in a city already hemorrhaging residents, investors, credibility. Mayor Adams is running now as an independent, which complicates things. So maybe a Republican can get in. Maybe an independent can stay in. Maybe Mayor Adams can be reelected. I haven't looked at the polling data. We're going to talk about that down the road. And can I say for a second, too, ranked choice voting. So if you don't know what ranked choice voting is, if you vote and your candidate of choice loses, they get knocked out because they want 50% plus one to choose whoever the nominees are that go to these, or however their primary operates. It happens in Alaska too, even in their general election. And so then you get to vote for a second person if your candidate gets knocked off, and so on until there's a victor. And so you can essentially vote for like 3 or 4 people, not at the same time in different rounds. That's dumb. Whoever has the most votes after the first vote should win. Period. We don't need this ranked choice vote. It typically screws Republicans. Because I mean, it can screw Democrats too, but it typically screws Republicans. They're screwed here. Ranked choice voting screwing him. The socialist candidate was ahead anyway, but it's very possible that the others could have coalesced and knocked him off. But the fact that even exists is absolutely ridiculous. I hate ranked choice voting. Look, socialism sounds compassionate in theory, until the bill comes due. And of course, the only way that we can pay for the bill is increasing taxes. New York already spends $112 billion a year in its budget. That's more than most U.S. states. Indiana's 2-year budget's like $47 billion. They spend $112 billion a year. A year. And it's a big city. It's going to be a big amount of money. There's already plenty of waste in New York City, and this is going to add to it. But they still have crumbling infrastructure, rising crime, fleeing businesses, And not just from the city, but from states. And the socialist candidates blame capitalism. This guy blamed capitalism the whole time on New York City's woes. But they forget it's that capitalism built the skyline to begin with. What did socialism really build? Venezuela, the Soviet Union, East Germany, chaos and poverty. North Korea. Communism, socialism, these things do not work. And we don't need that here in America. And now we are going to very likely have the same type of socialist leadership in America's biggest city. Now, this isn't a cry about Democrats and Republicans. This is about ideology. He happens to be a Democrat. Most socialists in America that are running for something at this type of level, of course, identify with the Democratic Party. But this isn't even a Democratic slam because the Democrats are in disarray over this. Absolute disarray over this as a party. And what do they do next? This kind of takeover is what's going to keep America hopefully moving away from that far left ideology of socialism. We can't have this. Can't have this. When you replace law and order with ideology, what do you get? Lawlessness. Ask Minneapolis. Ask Seattle. Soon, you're probably going to be able to ask New York City. If 2020 and 2021 wasn't a lesson on this, I don't know what else is. It even happened here in Indianapolis. Now, we didn't have this defunding movement per se at the time. But this ideology, what this guy ran on, is radical, radical, radical. The new socialist wave promises community-led safety. Means you're on your own. Tell that to working-class families in the Bronx or in Queens who can't afford a summer in the Hamptons when their neighborhood turns into an open-air crime location, drug market, you name it. That was the one thing that Mayor Adams, now he's got some other problems, but the reason he won last time was because in response to all this crap that occurred. And he was a pro-police Democrat, which is rare today at that level. There's plenty of Democrats who are pro-law and order, especially in smaller markets. And that's why Mayor Adams won last time around. But if he had not been so scandal-ridden, then perhaps this wouldn't even be a question we're having. But yet we're having it. New York City is more than just a city. It is an icon in the world. It is an icon in America. And we can't let it fall apart like this. We don't need the economic fallout. This is one of our capitalist hubs, not just in America, but in the world. And this money and these companies are going to start running out more if this guy wins. There's one more opportunity to stop him. I'm just not sure it's going to happen. Don't sleep on local elections, folks. That happens all the time. One of the lowest turnouts across America is in municipal government. But that is the one that is closest to home and affects you the most. More than Congress, more than your state legislature. Municipal elections. And because of this low voter turnout driven by a scandal, now New Yorkers are faced with what they're potentially faced with. This isn't great. This isn't great. There's still time. I don't know where this is going to go. But let this be a lesson to all the rest of us. Let's keep control of our local municipal elections. Let's show up. And let's make sure that socialism, that's the red warning here, right? If they're emboldened and they win this in America's biggest city, they're going to be emboldened all across the nation. And again, this isn't even a Republican or Democrat statement, though I'm never voting for a Democrat. But I sure as heck am never going to support a socialist in any form. And we've got to keep that off our doorstep. One more item we have to talk about today. I want to get to it. The show's I don't want it to run long. We don't have much time left. Historic is a word we don't toss around lightly, but that's exactly how Governor Mike Braun here in the state of Indiana described his move earlier this week. A statewide freeze on in-state undergraduate tuition and mandatory fees across all 15 of Indiana's public higher education institutions, flagship campuses, regional branches, community colleges like Ivy Tech, for the next 2 school years. This is great news in a time when education costs are skyrocketing. This is the first time ever that every public college in Indiana is freezing tuition simultaneously. And the first time since at least 2010 with more than 2 doing so. And Purdue is still doing it today. So why now? Indiana has been rolled, of course, in a budget shortfall. You've all heard that. There was a $2 billion budget shortfall that our legislature painstakingly had to fill. The General Assembly, along with Governor Braun and other folks across the spectrum, had to fill, forcing 5% budget cuts on top of cuts that Governor Braun was already making to right-size government. And despite that fiscal strain, schools like Purdue have shown, under the management of former Governor Mitch Daniels, have shown that tuition freezes are manageable. They've been doing it now for 14 years. The Indiana Commission on Higher Education, under Braun's urging, recommended 0% increase, an unprecedented unanimous vote on that board. And the governor's pitch was, this is a historic moment at a time where by not raising these fees, we can invest in folks in Indiana staying in school in Indiana and hopefully staying in Indiana to continue to build and grow our communities, our economy. And we can do that by holding the line on tuition increases. This puts students and it puts parents first, and ensuring that there is certainty and transparency in college costs at a time where everything is skyrocketing. Healthcare, education. We're finally getting a lot of price relief at the grocery store. That just these things take time, but this is a historic move. The system is broken, and we're looking to fix it, and this is a great first step. Removing these tuition cost increases that typically happen year after year especially helps those in first-generation family members going to college, low income, but it helps us all those that are looking to go to school, and also can help with enrollment, economic ROI. Of course, there's budget pressure with that, so the schools are going to have to right-size things. They're probably going to have to go out and get more foundation dollars to do maybe capital projects and things like that, but that's okay. That's what they should be doing, especially for their alumnus that have had success, that they can come back and invest in their school and these communities. And we're hoping that these universities don't increase fees in other places to help make up for that. This is an opportunity to right-size, just like we're right-sizing government in Indiana, right-sizing college costs. We can use this as a model to the nation, especially over the next couple of years if we show that this works. This can be a model to the nation to hold the line on cost increases at colleges and stop these exploding and ballooning problems with financial aid, with student loans. Of course, I believe if you sign up for a student loan, you should have to pay for it. But there are also, we know, some predatory practices in that. And with the costs continue to skyrocket, not everybody's built for vocational. Not everybody's built for college. We have to have these opportunities. And if college gets more and more exclusive because only a certain group of people can pay for it or afford it, it's going to spell trouble for us. And this is one way, this is a great way to invest back in Indiana. This is fantastic. So we need to follow the Purdue way. I'm not here to say Purdue, IU. My wife went to IU. I support IU because I married an IU gal. This is about making our institutions more affordable without breaking the bank. So this is a thing happening over the next 2 years. Maybe we'll see that these can be frozen longer, but it's a 2-year a 2 school year commitment. We're going to see the same quality. Our schools are great. Purdue, IU, Ivy Tech, they're all great institutions. They're world-class institutions. And of course, there's going to be people coming from out of state too. But this is a great move for Hoosiers. And I fully support it. My closing thought is, Governor Braun's statewide tuition freeze is a bold, historic, and headline-worthy announcement. And it can be a model for the nation if implemented correctly. And I'm excited that Indiana is on the forefront of that, and we're going to be able to, again, show the world, show America what Hoosiers can do together. Make America more like Indiana. Friends, this has been a great episode. I am so thankful that you've been here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your listenership. If you would like, share, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating where you're listening. Anything you can do to continue to help this show grow. We have. It's so great to see an audience building, a core audience building. There's more to do, and I am grateful that you're along for the ride with me. Have a great week.